Good evening all, and welcome. Before the video begins, like I said yesterday, my friend Briefcase has uploaded a new video. It's crazy good. This case is super dark, and it would really mean a lot if you'd give it a listen. Link in the description, and will be available at the end of the video. But without further ado, it's time for us to reflect on loves lost that we'd rather forget. So get comfortable and let the darkness take control. This story is not really about me, but about my younger sister and my relationship with her. We are very close, and she means the world to me. I have two younger twin brothers, but I'm not as close with them as I am with her. Anyway, before I begin my story, I have to provide some context about our lives. We grew up in a very Christian household. No, not the church every Sunday, and no cursing kind of Christians. I mean the go to church twice a week, a cross in every room, and daily prayer kind of Christian household. Needless to say, religion was a big thing in our family. I grew up around, mostly, my family, and didn't really have too many friends growing up, because my family preferred me hanging around with people who were in our religion. I'm not going to say which religion we are, because not everyone is like my family in our religion. I don't like putting people in bubbles like my family had me believe. Anyway, the kids we did get to hang around with were kids of my own religion, and luckily we got to go to school with them, and also normal kids. A lot of kids in my church did go to public school because it was the closest, and there wasn't a school directly for my religion in our county at the time. So my sister and I were very sheltered and awkward kids. We weren't allowed to do many after-school activities, and the ones we could do were more about academics like math club and chess club, and of course, Kids for Christ. Like I said before, me and my sister were rarely allowed to hang out with kids outside our religion without supervision. But when we did hang around other kids of our faith, we made the most of it. Especially since some of those kids were actually doing things against our religion, like doing drugs, sleeping with other kids in the church, cursing, and I can tell you many stories about me and my sister getting high and other cool stuff, but that's for another time. In fact, in the beginning, I even tattled on a few of them when I was in middle school, because it was drilled into me that they were going to hell if I did not. And so was I for keeping it a secret. Yeah, I had a lot of that stuff drilled into me. So most of what me and my sister learnt about the world outside our church was either from those cool kids or from Reddit and the internet. We had a family computer, and it had to be in the living room. Me and my sister had to use it in public to make sure we weren't using it for anything dubious. Sometimes me and my sister would go out to the living room at 2 a.m. and just go on websites that we weren't allowed to be on, like Reddit, Facebook, or watch funny videos. We didn't even have smartphones, because they were kind of just starting to pick up, and we weren't allowed to have them. So that's why we would do that. Sometimes we'd get caught from laughing out loud and get lectured by our father. But those are still some of my favorite memories with my sister. Enough backstory though, on to what happened. As I said before, me and my sister were both extremely close. We could tell each other anything, which is why it warmed and broke my heart when she came out to me as gay at age 17. I feel guilty because I said she was just confused, but I knew I was wrong. I hugged her and cried with her because I could only imagine the pressure and guilt and pain she was going through. Of course, we never told our family and kept it a secret. Being gay is something that is not accepted in our religion, so my sister wanted to get away from our family to some place where she could just be herself. When she graduated high school a year before I did, she begged my parents to go to a university she wanted. My parents told us that after high school we could either go to a community college or a university that was run by people of our religion, like a Catholic school or something. However, with enough convincing that we were good kids with Christ in our hearts, my parents let her go to the university she wanted, under the strict rules which I will get to later. I went to community college to get my general eds done, and then my parents let me do the same as my sister. I decided to go to a school in New York City called Columbia University, and my sister decided to go to a university called UCLA, which was a university in Los Angeles, California. I guess those extracurricular activities paid off. Although me and my sister were on opposite sides of the country, we were still able to communicate, because our parents let us have our own computers and Samsung Galaxy S4s, with the exception of being forced to download the app Life 360. If you don't know what it is, it's an app that allows your family members to see where you are based on the GPS in your phone. So we had to be careful where we went, or at least leave our phones at home in our dorms when we went out and partied at night. My sister and I would constantly talk about college life and how amazing it was to be away from the strict household. We could be free and do whatever we wanted. On Skype, she gave all the details about her life and told me things like about how extremely gay-friendly California was, and she even had a girlfriend now, and told me how open she can be about her sexuality. Unfortunately, she may have been a little too open. Let me explain. At home, we were constantly told to suppress sexual urges, so my sister just let hers all out while she was at college. She told me stories on Skype about how she was polyamorous, so she could date more than one person at once and had multiple girlfriends. I didn't get it, but she said she would sometimes want to experiment with toys, other gays, and straight couples, and would even sometimes bring 1 to 3 women, including her girlfriend of the time, back to the fraternity house and let all their urges run wild. I wasn't a fan of listening to those stories and thought she was making a lot of those stories up. But of course it's my sister. I did it anyway because I told her she could tell me anything. However, one experience is the one I'm telling you about now. One morning, I get a call at 2 a.m. and had to walk out into the hall because I didn't want to wake up my roommates. It was my sister. She was crying hysterically, and I could barely make out her words through her sobbing. "Just calm down. Tell me what's wrong." She responded that she was being stalked and harassed and didn't know what to do, nor who else to call. I told her to call the police. She told me that she couldn't, and I was confused and asked her to tell me what was going on. Apparently, the story goes like this. One day at university, my sister met this girl, April, and asked April if she wanted to be part of her polyamorous thing, or whatever it was. Apparently, they hit it off really well and had a really good connection. About a week or 2 into their relationship, my sister asked April if she wanted to come back to her dorm to watch Netflix and hang out. They did, but my sister's other girlfriend stopped by to pick up something she left at her dorm. My sister gave her a kiss goodbye, and when April saw this, she was kind of mad. She was upset because she thought she shouldn't do that when they're in the same room, or some other bullshit like that. And apparently they got into a fight. They made up and eventually got back together. Then my sister started noticing suspicious things about April for the past few months. April would constantly call and text her non-stop, get jealous when she was with another woman, and stuff like that. At one time, my sister received 48 texts from April while she was in class, and couldn't answer because she was taking a test. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? You better not be with another woman. Why don't you love me?" Crazy texts like that. That was the final straw for my sister, and she broke it off with April, who didn't take it well. My sister told me about April in the past, but I just thought nothing of it. Just people being crazy, I guess, right? However, my sister started seeing April everywhere she went. She saw her when she was walking to class, at the front of her dorm when she got out, in the cafeteria, messages on social media. It was insane. My sister threatened to call campus security on April, and that did seem to scare her off for a while, but that would only last so long. Fast forward to fall semester of 2015, and my sister starts to hear from April again. Only this time, things got worse. April would go around to women my sister was supposedly dating, and tell them that she was my sister's fiancé or girlfriend, or even she had an STD, and they should stay away from her or else. My sister even started receiving threats from April via social media accounts. I swear this girl was insane. My sister was terrified, to say the least. She called campus security and just asked her to watch out, that she doesn't try and come into the same dorm building, and to not make a big deal about it, and I'll explain why in a second. One night, my sister and her roommate come back into their dorms, and my sister noticed the door was open. They were sure that they had locked it. They came back, and the room looked fine, but there was a note on my sister's bed. What it said still scares both of us to this day. Like a cliché horror movie, the note read, "If I can't have you in my life, no one can. Never go near another woman, or else I know where you live." My sister just started crying and showed her roommates the letter. They were in utter shock, and also through her tears, she noticed one thing was missing. Her purse was gone. Her purse had a lot of important stuff in it. Her wallet, which had her license, debit cards, some dead gift cards, and other unimportant stuff. But luckily her phone and computer were still there charging under the bed. And after that, she immediately called me. Now I know what you're thinking. Why didn't she call campus security or the police? Well, here's the reason. Usually when situations occur on college campuses and the police have to get involved, guess who else might possibly receive a call? That's right, our parents. And if they found out about April and my sister, there's a good chance my sister would have worse to worry about at home. I've been told by people that technically the school or police can't call your parents without your permission, but my sister was too afraid to take the risk. That would be a hard thing to keep secret. The only thing we could do right now would be to cancel the debit cards and ask for new ones from the bank. Luckily, April didn't use them, because all the money was still there in her account. That was the only thing we had to explain to our parents. She just said that she may have accidentally left her wallet at Starbucks or something, and they were even worried just about that. As for her driver's license, I don't know what to do besides look up or Google how to get a new one, but she did end up getting a newer one later. So for the next few months, my sister was on constant lookout. But luckily she didn't hear from April in a while. We weren't sure if it was just because maybe she lost interest, or maybe because she was planning something, but we didn't care. That didn't mean my sister was still nervous. My sister always double-checks the area she was in, and made sure to be aware of her surroundings. She even went to the official college safe spot, and yes, those exist. Luckily, she didn't turn into one of the social justice warriors I keep hearing about. Anyway, she did hear from April a couple of times, but they were just messages from fake profiles on Facebook. She couldn't prove that they were her, but we knew they were. Who else would those messages be from? So luckily my sister never heard from her for a while. However, that wouldn't last too long. Like I said before, our parents had a tracking app on our phone, and often, our parents would just call us to see how we were doing, or why we were somewhere. So a lot of the time we just left our phones at our dorm. My sister told me through Skype that she heard from April again, when she brought a girl back from a party to her dorm to fool around. After they were done, she noticed she received a text from a random number about an hour ago. It read, "Bring another whore back to your dorm? I knew you were a slut." She said she was terrified. I told her April was probably just at the party because a lot of people were there, but make sure to still be on the lookout. A day or two later, I'm laying in bed watching my favorite movie with my girlfriend at the time, when I get a call from a blocked number. I knew I shouldn't have answered it, but I did anyway. I answered, "Hello?" And in a low voice I heard, "Hi. I bet you didn't know your sister was a little whore, right?" "Excuse me?" I say, and the person on the phone replied, "Yeah, a worthless little whore," and then just hung up. Needless to say, I was pissed off and confused, and my girlfriend could see it. She asked what was wrong, and I told her. I had to walk out and call my sister. I knew it was April, and I don't know how she got my number, but she did. I called her and told her not to panic. I told her to please be careful and to always carry mace or a stun gun or something, because we were stuck and we didn't know what else to do. Seeing her back home during Thanksgiving was such a relief, but I could see the effects that April and college stress had on her. The stress of finals were already killing us, and now we had this to worry about? Luckily, April didn't call my sister or I again for the last month, and things were quiet. Fast forward to December and all of our finals were done. We were both back at home with our parents and brothers, and glad to be home. We did, however, miss the freedom that we had at college. Whenever we came home from college, it went from freedom to go and do what you want to only using the computer in the living room and being home by 10 p.m. We spent the last few days either talking, going to church, relaxing, or texting our friends. And yes, we got to keep the phones. Christmas came, and I wish I could say it was a relaxing one, but it wasn't. First came church, then of course volunteering at the soup kitchen, which is something I actually like about my church, and then dinner with family. It was a lot, but in the end my family brought us new clothes and about $500 in cash and gift cards, so I'd say it was a good Christmas. Everything was peaceful, or so I thought. Fast forward a week or two. It was a cold Wednesday morning and my father was awake. He usually wakes up early because he enjoys drinking coffee in peace while watching TV or reading literature our church hands out. I was just starting to wake up when he calls me and my siblings downstairs in a not good tone of voice. We sat down on the couch and my mum was there as well. They looked furious, and we were all a little nervous and confused. What was going on? My father was looking through the mail and found a letter with a return address he didn't recognize and under the name Jane Doe. When he showed us what was inside, I couldn't believe what I saw. In his hand were printed out pictures of my sister from her private Facebook account. They were pictures of my sister either partying or kissing with every girl my sister was dating within that 2-year period. My sister's face turned as white as a ghost, and me and her must have shat bricks when he showed us. My father stared at my sister and said in the sternest tone possible, "What are these?" Before any of us could get a word out, he yelled it again. I was dumbfounded and terrified. My sister began to break out into tears. I was just sitting there and wondered, how the hell? And then I remembered. April had my sister's original driving license when she stole her purse. April must have copied pictures from my sister's Facebook account and sent them home. But I didn't understand how the hell she could have gotten those photos because her Facebook was private. April and her were friends for about a month, but she unfriended her and some photos were from after she blocked her. I didn't know how, but it didn't matter. What made it worse was on the back of the photos it read, "I know where you live." All I could remember was my father screaming, and my sister and mother were crying, and me and my brothers were just sitting there in shock. My sister confessed everything about her and April, and my parents were furious to say the least. My father walked up to me and my brothers and asked, "Did any of you know about this?" My 2 brothers legitimately didn't, and they answered no. My father walked up to me and asked if I knew, and like a dog, with the tail in between his legs, I responded, "No, I didn't." He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "People who keep other sins a secret and lie about it burn in hellfire. So I'm going to ask you one last time. Did you know?" Once again I responded, "No, I didn't, Dad." I could see my sister just in shock through her tears that I didn't defend her. I still see her shocked face in my nightmares. How could I not stand up for my baby sister, my best friend, my flesh and blood, when she needed it the most? In the end, my father gave her an ultimatum. Either my sister went to conversion therapy, which, yes, is still a thing in my state, or she leaves the house. Also, there's no way she was going to be allowed back into UCLA. My sister kept saying that she didn't need therapy, and begged our parents to accept her for who she was, but that didn't happen. In the end, my father kicked her out of the house, and me and my brothers were furious with them. When confronting my parents and yelling how could they do this, my mother and father kept justifying their actions by saying she chose to sin against God, and it put our family in danger. And if you're wondering why my parents didn't call the police, well, here's why. A lot of our neighbors and people in our community went to the same church. If one neighbor saw police cars at our house, someone would get suspicious, and someone would find out what happened. Word would spread through my church like wildfire, and my parents would be looked at differently and with contempt by everyone at church. My parents cared more about their reputation in our church than the safety and security of their own daughter. I never looked at my parents in the same way again. Luckily, a distant friend who left our church was able to take her in, although the spring semester of UCLA was already paid for. There was no way for her to get there, or support herself while there, so she never got to go back. My parents told me to cut off communication with her, but there was no way that was ever going to happen. They threatened to either not let me go back to school or kick me out, but I was able to find my way around them. My sister told me that she forgave me for not standing up for her, because she understands I was scared and it wasn't my fault. She said she kept blaming herself, but I kept telling her that there's nothing wrong with her. My parents never should have done what they did. I'm currently still with my parents and have another year until I graduate with my electrical engineering degree. My sister is still currently living with my friend, but she's got a job and a girlfriend, and they're a beautiful couple. When I move out, you're damn right I'm not going back to church. Not because I hate our church, but because I know it will make my parents angry, and they can't threaten me then. So to my sister, if you're listening to this, please know I love you, and I will always be there for you. Luckily, we never heard from April again. And if you're hearing this, April, I hope you understand that you ruined the life of an amazing young woman who was stuck in the closet. And rather than sympathize with someone on your own side, you made the life of a closeted gay person harder. So April, I hope you rot in hell for what you did to my family. This happened many years ago. I was newly single and looking for a way to meet new people. So I thought I would try my luck at online dating. I created a profile and went about speaking to men online. I even met a few for coffee or lunch. My initial nervousness at the prospect of meeting strangers online for possible romance was calmed somewhat, as I learnt that there were a lot of nice guys out there just looking for companionship like I was, and I became optimistic. In the past, I had a habit of dating men that were non-commitment types. I realized I was ready to try and find someone that wanted something more serious. I made a mistake though, because in formulating this goal, I largely blamed myself for my failed past relationships, reasoning that perhaps I had somehow unconsciously chosen a partner who was not ready for commitment. I decided I should try to be more open to nice, sincere men who seemed ready for the kind of relationship that I was ready for. In doing so, however, I ended up ignoring the gut instincts that I had always followed, and this came back to bite me. Enter Mark. Mark worked in a bank and was divorced with one child. He was fairly good-looking, articulate, and we shared many interests. We began chatting online, and this progressed to phone calls after a few days, and finally, the idea arose to meet for coffee. Looking back now, I note he seemed in a hurry to meet me right from the get-go, despite me saying I preferred to speak for a while initially. We decided on a possible date, general location within my neighborhood, and general time, but it was not confirmed. I recall at the time I was pretty busy, and as we began to get closer to the date, I felt like I was going to be too busy to meet him. In the days leading up, without a location or exact time set, I didn't get back to him, because I ended up getting tied up with other things and didn't know when I would be free. I hadn't spoken to him in several days by this point, and this is where the first red flag occurred. And in retrospect, I should have passed altogether with our meeting. But as I said, I was trying out this new attitude of being more open and accepting of nice men. On the date that we discussed meeting, I was out somewhere when my phone rang. I noticed that it was Mark. I picked up and he said in a warm tone, "Hello, I'm in your neighborhood." I know we said we were going to meet today, but where would you like to meet? Because I'm here now and waiting." I found this alarming, because not only had I never gotten back to him with a time or location, I knew for a fact he lived 2 cities away, and it would have taken a long time for him to drive down here on the loose plan of a meeting that was never confirmed. But again, I told myself, hey, this guy really wants to meet you. He's sincere. Enjoy this for a change. So against my gut instinct, I told him I would meet him on a different day, and agreed on an actual date and time. The date went surprisingly well. He was just as good looking in real life. We had a good conversation and he was very nice, and we started seeing each other. He was all about romantic gestures, paying attention to me, calling me, and generally just being kind and sweet every day. He always seemed to want to spend time with me, and I told myself that this was what I had been missing for a long time. I did my best to try and appreciate the gestures and attention as something positive, even though I wasn't really used to it, and it did feel a little strange, because I didn't know him very well, and he would do things like show up unannounced with flowers to my work, only after a short amount of time seeing each other. He was also very touchy-feely, something I wasn't used to or fond of. I was uncomfortable with his constant kissing and touching, rubbing of my arm, and just generally suffocating me even when we were in public. I recall one time telling him that I was going to go downtown with a group of my girlfriends for a birthday celebration, and he insisted that we should go out for a drink alone beforehand. I said it wasn't really necessary, because I would have an hour or so to spend prior to going out with my friends. The drive for him was about an hour or more, and I felt like this is an extreme amount of trouble to go to see me for a short amount of time. But he insisted that even an hour with me would be worth it. When he arrived, I met him at a local pub. We had a drink, and then he laughed and joked that he should just come downtown with me and my girlfriends. I told him no, that was weird. He wasn't invited, and that wasn't what we discussed. He went home, dejected, and that was really the first time I felt a little bit annoyed with him. Things went on though, as I spent the night at his house after about 3 weeks. I told him that I had plans the next day, and that I would have to get going at around 10 a.m. However, when I went to leave the next morning, he got very distressed and kept insisting that I should stay because it was a beautiful day. And it was a real shame that I was leaving, because there are so many wonderful things we should do together. That day, instead of me leaving to partake in the plans I had with my family. I should also mention that for the past week or so, he'd been insisting that he loved me, and would tell me multiple times a day. I didn't reciprocate. When I finally went to get out of the front door, he basically wrapped around me in the doorway and kissed me all over, hugging me, and repeated that he loved me, that I was everything he wanted in his life as a woman. I got really grossed out in the way he was behaving and left, very irritated, and didn't say anything, as I really did need to get going. I decided even before I was out his driveway that I was never going to see him again. Over the next day or two, I thought about how I would let him down and talked it over with my close friends. I kicked myself too for deliberately ignoring my gut. During this time, I responded to his relentless phone calls with polite texts to stall him until I was ready to speak with him. Finally, I settled on what I felt was a compassionate but firm approach to letting him down. I spoke to him on the phone and explained that I had come to the conclusion that I was not at a point in my life where I wanted a relationship whatsoever with anyone, including him. Lie. He kept trying to question what he had gotten wrong, what he misunderstood, but I kept repeating that he did nothing wrong. I simply didn't want to date. I went with this approach out of a complete lack of interest in doing anything to enlighten him on what a turn-off his behavior was. I had already enough responsibility in my life and had no desire to add a revoltingly pathetic man-child. Since we'd only been seeing each other for less than a month, I thought it would be the end of it. But I was wrong. I woke up the following day to find a long, desperate email in my inbox. He basically said he was mentally ill, and that he was taking an antidepressant that he blamed for his clingy behavior, although I had not complained to him about his behavior at all. He ended by saying the word, "throw out this medication, and therefore we should date again." The tone of the whole letter was panicked, selfish, and needy. He also repeated, "You are everything I want," but I did not once address the desires or feelings I had expressed for myself in our talk. I ignored it. Then the onslaught began. Over the week or so, he blew up my work phone, cell phone, and email with non-stop begging to reconsider his wants, of course, not mine. I became increasingly annoyed at how entitled he felt to dismiss everything I said that I wanted, and to blatantly intrude in my life with such a relentless stream of calls and emails. At work, for example, he called my desk phone literally 34 times in 3 hours. My co-workers were flabbergasted and even offered to answer and scream in his ear. I can't understand why he thought that behavior would somehow make someone like him. It obviously did the opposite. One of his texts to me was in regard to a pair of cheap, plastic, scratched sunglasses that he had left in my car. He claimed that they were very expensive, and that they belonged to his mother, and that she would be very upset if they weren't returned. Whatever, I thought. So I drove directly to his house and dumped them in his mailbox. I finally texted him back just after to let him know that they were in there, and to not contact me again, so that hopefully he wouldn't formulate any more asinine excuses to see or talk to me. Of course, this didn't stop him. The onslaught continued several more days until he next claimed I'd left something small, a scarf or something, at his house, and that he needed to return it to me and would come to my work. I sent him another text. "I told you to stop harassing me. If you contact me again, I'm calling the cops, and will show them the onslaught of emails, voicemails, and texts you've been sending." This worked. Well, sort of. I continued to get the occasional Facebook messages from him for a few years, even though we weren't friends, and I never replied to a single one. In the last one, he told me that he had spotted me out in public somewhere. I was with my giant husband, thank God, and he wrote how good I looked, and added that he hoped still we could be friends again one day. No thanks, Mark. I don't want to be your friend, but thanks for the lesson learned. Never ignore your instincts. This was 2015. I wasn't really actively looking, but would pop onto OkCupid every few weeks to see if anything interesting was in my inbox. Being female, I had a very active inbox. Sorry guys. I noticed an email from an interesting, fairly local guy. The email was alright, asking about polyamour, which I don't mind talking about if the person asking is sincerely interested and respectful. We get to chatting, and I had zero romantic interest, but thought this could be a friendship. And after a few months of talking, he found me on the Book of Faces, and asked if it was okay to send a request. I agreed. We'd been chatting and getting along well, and he seemed like a nice person. Little weird, but I'm a little weird myself. We continued to chat here and there for about 2 years, sent birthday greetings and just a casual friendship. He asked several times to meet and hang out, and I considered it, but at that time I was running my own business and worked about 70 hours a week, plus maintaining my home and raising a young child. And trying to balance 2 partners and an extremely needy, demanding workaholic client who had no boundaries, with 11 p.m. phone calls without a note of hesitation or remorse, it never occurred for me to meet up. But we kept in touch online. Late last year, a news story broke out about a man and his girlfriend murdering her young teen daughter. I never connected the name until a few friends contacted me and said, "Oh, I see you're friends with him. Did you see the news?" The news stories all use his legal full name, which is why I never connected the 2 dots. My then online friend of 2 years had beaten, sexually assaulted and strangled and then dismembered his girlfriend's teenage daughter, with the girlfriend's help. He made several statements since then, stating that he always had this fantasy, and that this child was very sexual, and that it wasn't fun murdering her, but he apparently thought it would be. Still sends a chill down my spine. I dodged a bullet big time. Be safe out there. You never know who's on the other side of a keyboard or phone call. This all started on an online game called League of Legends. Back in the time I used to play alone, so it was rare to see someone talking my native tongue, which was surprising when I saw 2 players in the in-game chat speaking back and forth in the language, and I got excited and replied as well. That's when I met this guy. We added each other on social media and quickly became friends. We also realized we lived on the same place but different islands. On a few days of getting to know him, I noticed that he was a guy who suffered from depression. So as a friend I tried to help him overcome it, but that just made him fall in love with me. Back at the time, I was 18 and he was 2 years older than me, and he decided to move to my island to continue his studies here. I honestly got so happy to meet him in person, and a few months after he moved here, and after some dates, we began a relationship. That was a big mistake. He was very jealous and wouldn't let me be with my friends or even my family. Sometimes my parents would pick him up and bring him to my house so he wouldn't be alone, and he refused to talk to them because he was mad that I was giving them too much attention. Things started to escalate when he called me at night screaming on my phone, saying he was going to commit suicide if I didn't give him all of my attention or sleep with him. So I started experiencing anxiety every night, with fear of his calls, and never had the opportunity to end our relationship because I didn't want to be the cause of his suicide. One day I stayed home, afraid again of all of the abuse that I was suffering from his hand. It was on that day he sent me a Facebook picture of his shirt full of blood, and I almost dropped my phone. I spammed him with messages and missed calls trying to see if he was okay. I almost called an ambulance, afraid he was hurt or worse. And hours later he replied, saying nothing was going on, and that he got hurt during dinner and couldn't reply sooner. I got angry, demanding to know how he got the injury. He refused to tell me if I didn't call him first, so I did. And what he told me still gives me shivers. He told me that the bloody pictures weren't from an accident. He had purposefully cut himself so that he could get pleasure with my panic and attention towards him. When I heard this, I switched off my phone, got a panic attack, and my parents rushed to my bedroom, and I told them what was going on. Before we all blocked him on social media, I told him to never contact me again and that our relationship was over. The next day, I received several phone calls and threats from his mother and family, and I decided to wake up earlier the day after to go to school since he knew my schedules. On the way there, I called a friend to let her know what happened and to give me company until I went to class. We were talking in the school cafeteria, full of people. When class started, most of the students were making their way there. That's when my friend, with silent wide eyes, looked at me. I looked back and jumped. It was my ex. He had the most dead eyes I'd ever seen in my life. When I saw that he had something in his pockets, I bolted. I'd never run so fast in my life. I quickly got up and looked at the bathroom stall. When the maintenance lady saw me running, she came after me and asked me what was going on. I told her there was a man in school that wasn't a student and that he was after me and could be armed. She quickly got me locked up in a classroom and called the police. They came but never found him, and they took me to the station to write a report. This was a year ago, and they never found him. I guess he went back to his other island when he saw trouble coming, and I hope we never meet again. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I want to apologize if you heard some background noises there. Moving is hard, and Pandora has found that smashing metallic cups against a glass coffee table is the most entertaining thing in the world, and removing said cups results in perpetual screaming, both of which are undesirable whilst trying to record a video. So it was the lesser of two evils, which was give her back the cups. So yeah, I hope I tried to edit out as much as possible. I hope you didn't hear it, but if you did, hear the occasional bang, that's what it was, and I'm sorry. It's quite hard to do everything whilst all this is going on. Hopefully everything will be back to normal shortly. If you like the video, don't forget to drop a like and leave a comment. That's always super nice. And if you're new here, why not subscribe and press the little bell icon to be notified every time I post. Don't forget that my friend Briefcase has a new video out. It's so good. Such a good case. For real. And if you need something to listen to now, I'd recommend that you go listen to that. It's really top quality stuff. But anyway, for now guys, I'm going to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.